Hello, everyone. How's it going? Dr. Incompetent here, and I'd like to do a review of Palworld as it exists right now in early access, middle of February 2024. Now, normally I don't really review stuff that's in early access unless it's been there for a while, but Palworld is kind of an exception to that, just given how playable the game state is and how much attention has been generated by the game's launch, how many people are playing it, how popular it is. I think that there is enough here to discuss for a review, so I'm going to try it. Now, before we begin grading the game, which is what I do, I will give the game a grade. I'm also going to tell you that after the grade, I will make a recommendation on whether you should buy and play the game in its current state. So, what is Palworld? Palworld is, in a meme, described as Pokemon with guns. And that does some of the service of helping to explain it to, the uninitiated, but it doesn't really cover the scope of Palworld. If it was just that, it would be purely derivative and would not be something I personally would be interested in, because I've played through one Pokemon game completely, which was Stadium, and I've never been a real huge fan in Pokemon. I've played the card game. I played a little bit of some of the older games, but I don't particularly care for gotta catch 'em all, kind of games myself. But that being said, even though I don't necessarily like Pokemon that much, I enjoy Palworld. Now, there's going to be a lot of debate with Palworld and people saying, no, it's completely derivative, it's garbage, and that's fine. If that's the position that you hold, then don't even bother playing Palworld. But I don't feel that way to a degree. I will, express that it's remarkably similar in some of the art design for the pals, and there's undeniable overlaps that this is a kind of game that amalgamates different systems from games that and puts them together into a package that is intuitive and generic in some regards, and yet ultimately I feel like Palworld does have enough of an identity to be worthwhile, and it is something that could change over time. This is still early access. So the user tags on Palworld for the Steam page say that it's a multiplayer open world survival crafting 3D game, and I'll also add on management, RPG, tech tree, exploration, adventure, combat game, just as some genre types that we can throw in there. It does a ton of things. That's one of the amazing things, is that this game is, as of this review, not even out for a month from early access, and it still is doing all of these things and doing them pretty well for the most part. So that's a testament to the scope of the game, and yet, at least in the early game, these things are functioning well. There's more time for them to, add more pals, add more functionality, but for now, it works well. And what is the experience like? Is it just like Pokemon? Well, no. It's not like the Pokemon that I'm used to, in the sense of playing a turn-based game. I know that they've made Pokemon recently that aren't turn-based. I didn't play those. But what you can do in this game is, yes, you throw Pal Spheres, which are Pokeballs, and you capture pals, but you do more than just fight to go capture more pals. You actually can use your pals to help you build. You can automate systems of labor and production with your pals. You can use your pals to fly around, traverse the environment. They have special abilities. You can upgrade the pals and do all of the things that you would expect in a Monster Collector game. But what blew me away was just the fact that they work alongside you at your base, and if I'm crafting arrows at the workbench, a pal might come up and help me craft. I just thought that was such a cool addition. They can farm, they can cook, they can forge metal, they can do all these different jobs, and that in itself makes it a unique experience, even though those systems are present in other management and automation games, not in a monster collector game that I've seen. So when you're playing this game, what you're doing is you are collecting pals, you're exploring this world that you find yourself in. There's secrets everywhere, there's different biomes, you're building a base, you get raided. Even if you play PvE like I do, you will get raided by the AI. There's a day and night cycle, you're moving around, you're finding rare pals, you're finding timed dungeons. This is the experience of the game. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to, tell you the end game business of the story, but quite frankly, I haven't figured that out myself because the story is not really one of the strong suits of Palworld. So given what Palworld is, how would we define it in terms of a review? Now, before I talk about that, though, I do want to mention it is multiplayer. I'm playing single player, but it does have a multiplayer element. I don't think it's fully elaborated that you can fight or challenge other, PAL, Sphere, Wielder, Trainer people or whatever. But there are PvP servers where I've heard horror stories from people that they've got their pals stolen and stuff like that. But I don't know if that was just hackers or how the game exists. But what I have heard from people is that families have been able to play this game together, and it's been a super fun time for people to play even just PvE together, build together, gather together, do more stuff. So that's just in and of itself something that's unique from the typical Pokemon experience. So when I do a review, the first thing I like to talk about is the fun factor. Is it a fun game? And in Palworld's case, yes, it's actually tremendously fun. That's one of the things that it does well. If it was an abomination where they were just, using AI algorithms and, intellectual theft to make a game that was cherry-picking the desirable elements of other games, first of all, that's done many times before. That's just kind of the nature of iteration of game development. But this game does perhaps cross certain boundaries that are problematic, and then that would be an issue for me more so if the game weren't fun and didn't have its own feel and identity. But I think that actually Palworld is able to be fun and have enough of its own thing to be like, yep, that's Palworld. Oh, I see what you're doing. I know what that is. Now, that might just be virtue of the fact that it's the first of this type of, kind of game creation experience to do this so aggressively. And we might see stuff down the road that is not as insightful or meaningful or interesting. But for me, I have fun playing this game. I have fun doing what it wants me to do. I enjoy collecting new pals. It's cool to see a shiny pal. It's cool to catch it. It's fun to fly around on a flying mount. You get it really early in the game. I love building my base. I love how the game looks. I love the cuteness of seeing a little sheep with, a hammer working next to me. I like the quality of life features. If you're a person like me, for example, who is notorious for poor organization, this game is a godsend of organization because as long as you're within your sphere of influence of your base, all containers are linked, and at any crafting table you can draw from those containers as long as they're in the area, and the area is huge. So no more going around being like, where did I put that necessarily? Sometimes you have to do that, but for the most part, it's so convenient to just quick dump your items into chests, have them right by your stations for gathering and ease. Your pals even help you gather the materials and sort them away and put them away. And you can queue up crafting, like, hey, can you make me some arrows? And while you're out exploring, maybe one of your pals will work on that for you and make the arrows for you. It's fantastic. So I think the game is surprisingly fun for how early it is in development, and I was very skeptical when I first started playing it, but I always just am enjoying my time when I play. That being said, the grind is real in the game. It starts off at a great clip, at a great pace, and I haven't gotten to the end game myself, but from what I understand, as you get further and further, the grind becomes more of a factor. but maybe that's just growing pains with early access and they'll smooth that out. And maybe that's overstated. Maybe that's not true. Tell me what you think if you've gotten further in the game, if that's true, that it gets a little bit grindier. But for me, I think that one of the things that makes this work, makes this such a gaming moment, is the fact that it's actually fun. If it was just like, oh, it's a Pokemon ripoff and it's okay, but it's forgettable, then I don't think it would have over 200,000 Steam reviews just in early access, and has only been out since January 19th. That is telling you something, and it's not getting even as review bombed as you might expect a game with this much controversy surrounding it. And, you know, for some people, there really isn't that much controversy. It just depends on kind of who you talk to. But it creates a really interesting conversation as we move forward about intellectual property, theft, the use of AI in game design, etc. So once we talk about the fun, which Palworld is fun, the next thing I want to talk about are the controls. How does the game control? There's all these things that you're doing in the game, and is it intuitive to do them given the controls? Yes, I say yes. I'm actually playing with a gamepad on PC, and for me, the game controls just great. Everything I completely understand where the buttons are. You know, there might be some advantages to mouse and keyboard, perhaps, but for me, I find everything to be mapped intuitively to the gamepad. Everything works as expected. There's a little bit of jankiness every now and again with some of the pathing of the pals and, you know, some of the building and stuff, but that's to be expected, especially in early access, and it really hasn't been too much of a detractor for me personally. So I think, and this is part of what really surprised me about Palworld, was just like, man, this game is smooth. Like, the control is smooth. The performance of the game is smooth. The execution of all of these systems is really smooth for a game at this stage. Now, granted, early access isn't early access. Some games come out of early access and they haven't had any time in the oven at all. From what I understand, this game was baking in the oven for quite a while before they made it public for early access, but it benefited from that. And it works really well, in my opinion. Now, another part of the controls are the systems and the UI. I love to talk about how do the systems in the game work, and that's really important for a game like Palworld because there's so many systems going on in the game. And then how does the UI allow you to navigate and articulate those systems? So, first of all, the systems in this game, for the most part, are all working really well. Now, I can't speak to the PvP elements because I'm not doing that, but for me, most of the stuff works really well. The building, yep, makes sense. Sure, if you've ever played, you know, Ark or Fallout 4, No Man's Sky, then it falls in line with that. The building is good. The crafting makes sense. You build a craft table, you have the ingredients clearly displayed, you just go ahead and, you know, hold down the button to craft. The gathering of resources works just fine. You can easily just get a mount and ride or fly around. Fighting totally makes sense if you're fighting at range or close up and melee. You know, exploring the map, traveling around the map with an awesome fast travel system. It's just amazing how many things you can do. Farm, gather, capture, explore, fight, and they all work really well. The game isn't breaking for me. I'm not throwing my controller in frustration because it's not doing what I'm asking it to do. Yes, there are glitches and bugs every once in a while, but really not that many that I can think of in my experience. So I think the systems are, again, one of the strong suits. It's one thing to borrow systems from other games, and Palworld is undeniably, I think it sells it short to just say it's a Pokemon copy, because it's not just a Pokemon copy. It's also a Zelda Breath of the Wild, Ark Survival Evolved, you know, game that copies from those very, very famous IPs, and yet does it in a way that makes sense and feels good. It just works. So that's great. Then how about the UI? For me, the UI is just fine. It's consistent, it's polished, You can see what you need very easily. There's a little bit of chug in the load time for some elements of the UI when you're opening up all of the pals that you have, for example, but not bad. So I think the UI is really, really good for managing all of the stuff in the game, and I think it's just a testament to the fact that you have a UI that explains all this stuff clearly, how many spheres you have, what type you have, how many bullets or arrows you've got left, if you've captured the PAL, where you're going. It all works just like you would expect. So how about the story in Palworld? Well, this is one element that the game doesn't, at least at the moment, do very well, if at all, but I'm not sure if that's going to change, and I'm not really sure how much it matters. Maybe they'll put in some more lore. Currently, you get an opening and you find journal entries to help explain the situation, and then there are a few NPCs that you meet that offer, pretty cryptic comments about what's going on. There is, of course, no logic when you're thinking about a game like this, and there isn't a narrative that's very strong pulling your character emotionally, and none of the relationships that you make seem to be significant, at least as far as I've played. But that doesn't detract from the experience significantly for me. It's better than having, a terrible story that's intrusive on the gameplay. Right now it's pretty minimal, and you don't even have to read it if you don't want to. That being said, they could add to the story and the lore to help develop the personality of the game by giving it more firm identity and uniqueness if they chose to do that, but, it's not really why you're going to be playing a game like this. Next, let's talk about the graphics and the visuals of the game. This is one of the things that Palworld does so well, one of the many things. I think the graphics are fantastic, considering it's not going to blow you away. It's not the most hyper-realistic, graphics ever, but the textures and the presentation look good. I think that the game has a nice, bright color palette. Everything looks really, really well done, again, for an early access game. And what really impresses me personally is the performance of it. The game looks really good for me. Again, I'm playing on PC, and the performance is very nice with good graphics settings. So it's encouraging. So many titles in early access, they have to optimize the performance better. It's uneven. The frame rate can, dip. I'm not saying that that's not possible to happen in this game, but for the most part, it looks really good. It's got a nice art style. In places, some of the pals could obviously be punched up, but for the most part, looks good, performance is good. Now let's talk about the audio. How does this game sound? Is there voice acting that's strong? Is there good music? And yeah, it's fine. For me, the sound effects are good. They're surprisingly like Zelda at times in a way that's alarming, but in terms of just the sound effects. And the music is fine. Nothing of note that really comes out in my mind so far that really sticks with me, but it was fine. It's nothing bad where I'm like, oh man, they really missed something here with the way the game sounds or the music of it. It all works just fine, but it's forgettable, at least for me. Maybe after I play for many more hours, think the theme songs and such will lock into my brain, but that hasn't happened yet. Then finally, let's talk about the style of the game. This is kind of the most controversial element, perhaps, because you could say, well, again, it's totally derivative. It's a copycat style. All they're doing is mixing in elements from, Ark and Zelda and Pokemon, and, it's got nothing unique. And I would actually argue that, yes, it does borrow from those heavily, but I feel the game is unique because when I play it, there is no mistake that I am playing Palworld. When I see it, I know immediately what game that is. So, despite the fact that there is a lot of legacy that it's drawing on, I think that this game does have a good style. I think That could be developed. It could, be refined and sharpened even more. But for now, I think the game is so polished, is so professional, is so nice in the way that it everything works smoothly and it feels slick and high quality, that I feel like the style is pretty good for this game. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have room to grow, but for now, I think it does have a good style. And this is a testament to the fact that, if you're thinking about the Relaxosaurus or whatever, there are already some of these pals that are memes that people enjoy. And that gives a testament to the fact that there is something specific and enduring, perhaps, about the game's style. So, overall, taking into consideration everything that I've just said about the fun factor, the controls, the story, the graphics, the audio, the style, how would I grade this? Now, remember, the first thing I like to do when I reveal my grade is ground the grade using the Steam reviews and Metacritic. Well, currently Metacritic doesn't have much because it doesn't present a score for games that are in early access. But if you look at the critical response, most of the early access reviews that critics are willing to share are high. They are, you're going to see 8 out of 10 largely. There are some that, ding the game, but mostly it's positive. And currently, as of the time of this review, the game is very positive on Steam with a whopping 215,000 very positive reviews. And so Google kind of makes that a 9 out of 10 from Steam and an 8 out of 10 on IGN. What that means to me, number one, is 215,000 reviews from a game that's not even a month old, that's in early access, is kind of mind-blowing. This is a gaming event, one that I think is worthy of participating in and trying out, because the game is fun, and it's just this moment of, the early part of 2024 that is really, really ballooning up. Now, will that stay? I'm not sure, but right now it's quite impactful. And the other thing I like to do when I talk about the grade is I'm still evolving how I do reviews on the channel, how I arrive at grades, what is an A, a B, and a C. And for this review, I think it's important to remember that an A for me is a game that is a masterpiece, genre-defining, iconic, unique, and almost flawless in execution. These are the kind of elements I look for with a game that is A. It's kind of a one-of-a-kind, seminal gaming experience. So, Palworld, for me, if I were to grade it, is not an A, but it could be an A someday. Currently, I give Palworld a B+. I think that it's not entirely unique, it's not entirely genre-defining, it borrows from a lot of other games, but because it does so in such a successful fashion, in a way that is fun and approachable, intuitive, well thought out, I think that it's got great visuals, it's got good sound, and it's just a fun game to play. I still think it is a good game. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I give it right now a B+. Now, it could be the case that as the game evolves, as they add more content, more things to do, more pals, more elements to the game, that I could elevate this upon full release. Maybe I will do another review of Palworld after full release happens. But for now, I'm comfortable giving Palworld a B+. I'd love to know what you think of Palworld. Do you think that my grade is reasonable? Do you have a higher or lower grade that you would give Palworld? Please leave those in the comments below. And if you're interested in playing Palworld, I should mention I have a Let's Play that documents my very first time booting up the game, playing it on stream. And I also have a complete beginner's guide if you're thinking about picking up the game and you want to get into it and you want to have a little bit of kind of a guide that you can play along with to help you understand the beginning portion of the game and be successful. Now, the next portion of the review that I like to do is should you buy the game, and is it worth playing for someone else? So I look at different criteria to determine if it's worth playing and, should you buy it. So if you like open world, survival, crafting, action RPGs in the world of Zelda, with monster collecting like Pokemon, and building like, Ark Survival, for example, then yeah, I think you would like this game. I think that you would be into it. Now, it is cartoony, of course, so that's something to factor in. But then again, you get guns, and you get hilarious guns. You get muskets, and there's chain guns, and there's crossbows. So all of that comes into play when you consider what genre it is, and if you like those kinds of genres, should you play it? What about the difficulty? For me, this game is not difficult. The penalty for dying is not very significant, and yeah, if you try to fight some PAL boss that's way higher level than you, you're going to get cleaned up, but for the most part, the game is not that punishing. You can heal your pals and yourself and repair your stuff pretty easily, and the quality of life is very high, such that I think it's not a challenging game. So that makes me recommend it more to people, because some players are put off by overly difficult games. You're not talking about an Elden Ring, Souls-like caliber of difficulty, even a Monster Hunter level of difficulty. This is not that bad. What about the value? Is this good value for the money? For me, I would have to say overwhelmingly yes. Now, I should give you a caveat for that. I am playing this game using the Xbox PC Game Pass, which I'm a monthly member of, and it's free. So to get the game for free is ridiculous. If you're not a member, you could try this out for a month instead of buying the game, and see if you like it, and save a bunch of money, and then have also access to everything else on Xbox PC Game Pass if you have a PC and you want to play it on that. So there's that. But even if you want to buy this game on Steam, what's crazy is that this is $30 American at the moment. In early access, you're talking about $29.99 for a game that is very, very far along, as considering what early access games generally release at. Some early access games, they're expensive, they don't have a lot of content, and they might even get abandoned. I don't think any of those things are in play for this. This game's going to be there, and there's a ton of content, and they're more and more on the horizon. So for the $30 price point, I really think it's a great value. As far as replayability, that's a tricky one. Yeah, the beginning of the game is fun, but I don't think many players are to the point where they're like, okay, I've cleared the game and now I want to play it again. I think that there's so much going on, especially at the end game, which may be more grindy, that people aren't doing that. Some people who, have hundreds of hours already maybe are doing that, but most people aren't. But you can replay it in the sense that you can make a multiplayer server and play with your friends and have a different account for doing that if you're interested. So there is some replayability with that in mind. So overall, honestly, I'm very comfortable recommending Palworld to people. I think that it is a game that is very fun, very easy to get into, has a ton of value for the price point, and is only going to grow as it develops through early access. It's an exciting moment in our time in terms of gaming, and if you want to be a part of it and you want to see what it's all about, I really think it's worthwhile. So that is my recommendation for the game, and that is my grade, which is a B+. Granted, I know that some players are going to just be completely put off by some of the concerns about the game's creation and its use of other IPs, but it doesn't bother me enough to make me boycott the game or anything like that, because I feel that even though there's heavy influence, it has enough of its own thing going on to make it something that stands on its own and is worth playing. So let me know in the comments below what you think about my recommendation and what you think about my grade, and please tell me how you're faring so far in Palworld if you're playing and what you think about the game. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Remember, I will put links in the description below to my Let's Play and my beginner's guide. If you want to see some more footage of Palworld, make a further determination on, what kind of a game this is, and do I want to purchase this game, you can certainly look at that. I've got lots and lots of hours into the game that you can follow along with. Thank you again for watching, everyone. Take care.